The old key in the empty room. You ever wonder when the shift begins, when your child stops seeing you as home and starts seeing you as inventory? My name is Lorraine. I'm 72, and until last spring, I lived in a 2-story farmhouse that my late husband Harold and I bought in 1976. We raised 3 children there, chickens in the yard, wallpaper that peeled in the summer, and a porch swing that creaked like it had secrets. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, mine, until it wasn't. It started with my son Matthew, my oldest, my only boy, the golden child with a big laugh and an even bigger ambition. He used to mow that lawn every Saturday morning without being asked. He used to bring me daisies he picked from the side of the road. He used to love me like I was unshakable, until one afternoon he arrived with a real estate agent in tow. "Just thinking ahead, Ma," he said, his grin too smooth like butter hiding a knife. "We could turn this place into something great. Upgrade the plumbing, open concept kitchen. You wouldn't have to lift a finger." The agent, a sharp woman with a Bluetooth headset and a clipboard, barely looked at me. She only saw the acreage, the bones, the potential profit. I laughed. Of course I laughed. Was this a joke? But Matthew was serious. He had drawn up a trust transfer. For tax purposes, he explained, placing the paper before me like it was a gift. I didn't sign it that day. I didn't scream either. I did what old women like me do. I made tea, and I listened. That was the beginning. The day I lost the house was quiet. Too quiet. I woke up to the smell of rain on the porch and the kind of gray sky that makes you want to stay under the covers. But Matthew had called the night before. "Just need a quick signature, Ma. Nothing big, I'll swing by in the morning." He promised breakfast. He brought croissants. We sat in the kitchen. He buttered his. I didn't eat mine. My hands were shaking, though I didn't know why. Maybe I did. He laid the papers out again. "Living trust, Ma. You'll still be here. Just on paper, it'll be under my name. We avoid probate this way. You know when the time comes?" When the time comes, that phrase, it chilled me. He slid the pen toward me. "Just here. Initial here. Then sign. You trust me, right?" That's the thing about fear. It doesn't always look like screaming. Sometimes it looks like compliance, like a trembling signature at the corner of a page you don't understand, like believing your son couldn't hurt you. So I signed. I told myself it was fine, that I was being paranoid, that my own child wouldn't lie to me. But days passed, then a week, and I started noticing things. He stopped dropping by. He didn't return my calls. The property tax bill stopped arriving in my name. And then came the truck, a red pickup I'd never seen before, pulling into my driveway like it belonged there. A couple got out, a man with sunglasses and a woman with a wide smile. She waved. "Hi, we're the Morrises. Just came by to see our new place. My new place." I opened the door and stood there, my robe half-tied, my mouth dry. "Excuse me." "Oh, didn't your son tell you?" she said, her voice light too light. "We closed on the house last week." I stared at them. My legs were suddenly jelly. The woman blinked. "Are you okay?" I closed the door before I collapsed. I sat in the kitchen for hours, the croissant plate still on the table. His signature, my house, sold, gone, and I had no idea where I was supposed to go next. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling fan and thought of every diaper I'd changed, every science fair I stayed up late helping him with, the nights I skipped dinner so he could eat twice, the winters I walked to work while he took the car I paid for, all of it folded into a betrayal tucked neatly into a manila folder labeled trust. I didn't call him. I wanted to hear it from his mouth. I wanted to give him a chance to undo it, to explain, to beg if he had the decency. But Matthew didn't come. The next day I marched into the county recorder's office. The clerk, a kind-eyed man named Jerry, looked up my address. The deed had been transferred 2 weeks prior, from my name to an LLC with Matthew's name as managing partner. He'd set this up long before the croissants. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth would crack. I asked Jerry for a copy. He slid the paper toward me almost apologetically. There it was, the signature. Mine, and below it a line that made my vision go red. Buyer Morris Property Solutions, LLC. Morris. The smiling woman on my porch. He hadn't just transferred the house. He had sold it, cashed out, and never told me. I stumbled out into the sunlight, the paper fluttering in my hand, like a white flag of surrender. But I wasn't surrendering, not this time. I called him. He picked up on the second ring. "Ma, I didn't waste breath. You sold my house." A beat. Then, it's not like that. It was a restructure. You weren't supposed to be surprised I live here, I hissed. You gave it away, and you didn't even warn me. You signed the papers, Ma. You signed the trust. It was all legal. Legal, that word. How dare he hide behind it like it excused everything. You said I'd still live here. I said you'd be taken care of. He snapped, and for the first time, I heard the irritation in his voice. Like I was an inconvenience. I raised you, I whispered. Exactly, he replied coldly. And now it's my turn to make decisions. You just didn't like the one I made. I hung up before the sob broke through my throat. No, not like this. I wasn't going to be erased quietly. He wanted me gone. Fine. But I was going to decide how. I didn't leave the house. Not yet. Let them figure out what kind of woman they tried to bulldoze. The next morning, I made coffee. I showered. I dressed. I opened the windows. I watered the potted ivy Harold planted the year we retired. If I was going to be forced out, I would haunt this house with every bit of my dignity intact. Then I pulled up the floorboard in the master closet. Harold was many things a quiet man, a stubborn one, but he was also careful. When he got sick, he sat me down and told me 3 things: the safe code where he kept the cash box, and the name of the attorney he trusted more than our pastor. I hadn't touched that box in years. Inside was a copy of our original deed, in both our names. A photo of us the day we signed it, me in overalls, Harold with ink on his fingers. And the will. His last will and testament. It left the house to me entirely and unconditionally, which meant if Matthew had used the trust to bypass the will and then sold it under false pretense of my consent, it wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. I took the documents, drove to a UPS store, and made 6 certified copies. Then I walked into a law office 2 towns over. Not local, not familiar, not someone who knew my son. I handed the folder to a young woman behind a thick mahogany desk. I need someone who knows how to undo a betrayal wrapped in legal tape, I said. She looked through the papers, eyes widening. Did you know your signature was used to void your existing rights? I nodded once. She looked at me with something I hadn't felt in weeks. Respect. You still living in the house? For now, don't leave. That gives them more power. I leaned in. They already think I'm powerless. She smiled. Good. That means they'll never see it coming. We filed the injunction that day. Emergency motion for fraud investigation, motion to rescind sale, motion to freeze Matthew's assets through the LLC pending review. It would take weeks, maybe months, but it was in motion. When I returned home that evening, a moving truck sat outside. The Morrises were unloading. Boxes, luggage, a gold lamp sticking out of a crate like a sword. I stood on the porch. Afternoon, I said calmly. The woman blinked. Oh, hi. We didn't expect anyone to still be here. I tilted my head. Why would I be gone? I live here. Well, Matthew said. He says a lot of things. The man came around the truck. Look, lady, we paid cash for this property. Sight unseen. Your kid said it was all clear. I smiled. I didn't feel kind. I hope you kept the receipt. I walked inside and closed the door, locked it, and for the first time in weeks I felt something bloom in my chest that wasn't pain. It was war, and I was ready. The injunction didn't stop the world from turning. The Morrises weren't leaving. Not yet. They moved into the guest room, claimed it was temporary. I made coffee every morning and ignored the sound of their blender in the kitchen I designed. I folded my clothes in the laundry room while they laughed on the phone with contractors. They walked barefoot on the floors Harold waxed with his hands. And I stayed, because I wasn't just fighting for a house. I was fighting for the version of myself that still believed I was worth protecting, but it wore me down. I stopped sleeping. My chest ached. I flinched when the door creaked. Every sound in the night was the echo of a lie, my son's lie. On the 6th day, a court notice arrived. Matthew had filed a response. He claimed I had been mentally unfit to understand the trust, that he had taken control for her own safety. He even listed fabricated events like that. Time I left the stove on, it was 1 burner once 4 years ago, or when I got lost, driving it was foggy, and the GPS rerouted me for heaven's sake. He was painting me as senile. That's when I broke. I sat on the porch that night, knees to my chest, a blanket wrapped around me, Harold's ashes in the urn beside me like a sentinel, and I cried, the kind of cry that comes from somewhere below language, guttural, hot, silent. I had raised a man who looked me in the eye, kissed my cheek, and smiled while chiseling away everything I had built, all under the banner of love. Love, the ugliest word I knew that night. That was when I decided. This was no longer about getting my house back. This was about making sure Matthew couldn't do to another soul what he did to me. I would drag the truth into daylight, even if it left claw marks on my heart, even if it meant giving up the home I built, because something worse than losing a house is losing yourself in silence. The courthouse smelled like old carpet and colder truths. I wore my best blouse, the one Harold always said made me look too smart for small talk. My attorney, her name was Tessa, had told me to expect him to come in confident, smug. He didn't disappoint. Matthew walked in wearing a tailored navy suit. He had a lawyer in tow, one of those men who looked like he'd charged by the eyebrow raise. Matthew didn't look at me, not once, but I saw the twitch in his jaw when he noticed I wasn't alone, that I wasn't backing down. The judge, a woman maybe 5 years younger than me, leafed through the folder of documents we had submitted. The will, the deed, the property records, even my old journals. Tessa had included copies of my handwritten entries the week Matthew brought the trust. They were damning, especially the one that read, "He said I was safe." I didn't know he meant silenced. Matthew's lawyer tried to speak first. "She signed the papers, Your Honor," Tessa interrupted. "She signed under manipulated terms without full knowledge of the transaction and without legal representation. That's not consent. That's coercion." The judge's eyes narrowed. "And the sale. We have confirmation that the buyer, Morris Property Solutions, LLC, was set up by Mr. Klein 2 months before the trust was presented. The sale was premeditated." The judge turned to Matthew. "Mr. Klein, did you inform your mother of your intention to sell the home once the trust was transferred?" He cleared his throat. "It was understood." "It was understood," she repeated flatly. "By whom?" He hesitated. The judge tapped her pen. Then Tessa said, "We'd also like to submit a recording, Your Honor." Matthew's head whipped toward us. A soft audio played. Me and the kitchen phone recording tucked beneath the bread box. Matthew's voice. "It's all legal, Ma. You won't even have to move. It's just paperwork." The judge stopped the playback, turned to Matthew. "You misrepresented your intentions. You leveraged your relationship to secure a fraudulent transfer of real property." Her next words hit like rain on fire. "This trust is void. The sale is reversed. Ownership of the home reverts back to the petitioner, Mrs. Lorraine Klein." I didn't hear the rest, because Matthew stood up and said, "She's ruining everything over a house she can't even keep up." The judge didn't even look at him. She just said, "Sir, sit down, before you ruin something else." When I walked out of that courtroom, I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just breathed. The house was mine again, but more importantly, so was my voice. The locksmith came on a Tuesday. He was kind, didn't ask questions. I stood on the porch while he removed the deadbolt and replaced it with a sleek silver lock, one that required a code. He handed me a slip of paper to write the new number on. I didn't write anything. I memorized it. That night, I lit a candle in the kitchen and walked the halls like I was meeting the house again for the first time. I touched the banister Harold built with his bare hands. I ran my fingers along the dining table where my kids had spilled juice and secrets. I stood in front of Matthew's childhood bedroom. Empty, and I whispered, "You're not welcome here anymore. Not out of hate, out of healing." The Morrises had already vacated quietly after a lawyer from the title company informed them the sale had been reversed due to fraud. I sent them a check to cover their moving costs. Fairness doesn't require affection. The house was quiet now, but it was mine. I planted daffodils in the front yard the following week. Harold always loved spring. He used to say you can bury a lot in the fall, but in spring, everything tries to live again. I don't know if Matthew will ever apologize. I don't expect it. But I do know this. I will never again sign anything out of guilt. I will never again mistake silence for love. I will never again underestimate my own power. I didn't just take my house back. I took myself back, one signature at a time. What would you have done if you were her? Leave a comment. Your story could be the one that helps someone else wake up. Subscribe to Everglimpse for more true story thrillers like this, where the quiet ones fight back and secrets never stay buried.